Day 4 of the NFL Combine is over. We are all wrapped up from Indianapolis. We have some winners and losers to run through for the fatties up front. But before we get into that, shout out your team for me in the comment section. I want to see which fan base is best represented down below. So scroll on down and drop your team name once, twice, 3 times, and let's see which team is the most popular. Now, let's get into my first winner from the NFL Combine. It is Washington's left tackle, Troy Fautanu, and boy, oh boy, did he make a big impression in a good way in Indianapolis. First off, he measured in at 6'4", 317 pounds. Overall, great size for an offensive lineman. Some teams might think he is better suited to play guard in the NFL, but I think if you learned one thing from this weekend, it is the man is versatile. We saw that when he was playing at Washington, and that's going to carry over to the NFL, and that's definitely going to earn him a lot of brownie points for a team that might think, okay, we could use him at guard or we could use him at tackle. We could use him anywhere we want on the offensive line. Dane Brugler, who does a great job of covering the NFL draft, tweeted out, Washington left tackle Troy Fautanu is one of those guys that has a near universal approval rating among NFL scouts. Me too. He's come up over and over and over in all of my convos this week in Indy. He's illustrating why today the way he's moving in drills. I don't think Troy Fautanu gets past the LA Rams at pick number 19. That's the spot where I go, if he falls to 20, I am quitting my job. I think he is that talented, he is that gifted, he is that versatile, and he impressed this weekend in meetings, on the field. He showcased just how quick he is. Some people thought he was running faster than tight ends at moments. He's got the quick burst and acceleration you look for in offensive linemen. He is going to be a slam dunk pick for someone, especially in the teens if he does get out of the top 10. But after the way he performed this week, do not be blown away if he ends up creeping into the top 10 if someone falls in love with him. Now, my first loser, quote unquote, is actually no one at the Combine. It's just free agent offensive tackles because the Combine, it put on a show by the offensive line. This tackle class is beyond loaded. You know how every single NFL draft, there's usually 1 or 2 positions that we are told is super rich and super deep in? This is like deep and rich, like we just struck oil in the Saudis. Like there's just so many tackles this year that if you're a free agent offensive lineman, you might be in trouble. Peter Schrager tweeted this out, and I wanted to share with you guys. As I said on NFL Network just now, a GM told me this morning this is the best offensive line group he's ever seen at the Combine. Very good news for Jets, Giants, and countless other teams at the top of the draft with O-line needs. There are some marquee names like Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu, but then you've got guys like Amarius Mims, 6'8". Just let that sink in for a moment. 340 pounds, and he ran a 5.07 40-yard dash. It's just not natural for guys that big, this wide, to run that fast. But he's not even the best tackle in this class. That's how deep this NFL draft class is at the offensive line. So, if you're a Tyron Smith, if you're a Donovan Smith, an Andrus Peat, an Okafor, Charles Leno, all very quality, I mean, more so than others, offensive linemen from last year, you might be SOL. Like, why would a team go out and sign one of these guys when they can just take a starting caliber offensive lineman in day 2 of the draft, let alone day 1? Daniel Jeremiah, who covers the NFL draft exclusively, he tweeted out Garrett Greenfield, he's from South Dakota State, had a 38.5 vertical to break the offensive line record. Now, I don't know personally when any offensive line coach is going to ask his left tackle to jump as high as possible into the air, but it still just goes to show that this draft class is filled with athletic freaks. Not just an offensive line, wide receiver as well. We saw that with Xavier Worthy earlier this weekend, but still, starting caliber tackles, guards, centers in day 2 of the draft. Usually you see a team take an offensive lineman in the 2nd or 3rd round and, hey, we're going to start you. We're going to understand there's going to be some growing pains, but we're going to work through it for your rookie season, and by year 2, you should be ready to go. I think there are going to be guys that are found in day 2 of the draft that are already at that year 2 level in the NFL. And so the offensive line class is rich. And if you're a free agent offensive lineman, bad luck for you. Unfortunate timing, because there are going to be a lot of teams that go, well, we could sign that guy for $6, $7, $8 million, whatever. Or we could take this guy in the 3rd round of the draft and get very similar production for 1/8 of the cost. More winners and losers to get to in just a moment. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And they have an awesome deal for our viewers today. But first, let me tell you how Prize Picks works. You pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, if you don't quite understand what that means, let me explain it to you in layman's terms. Take tonight's NBA games, for example. I'm taking the more on both Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam with their lower point projection at 14.5 and 17.5. So if you feel like these are slam dunks, feel free to ride with me. You can always play any other day, though, if you're watching after those games have tipped off. But all you have to do is go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Download Prize Picks today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. I have put that link in the comments and description of today's video. So shout out to Prize Picks for supporting us here at Chat Sports. My second winner from day 4 of the Combine, I'm going to go with the Notre Dame offensive tackle, Joe Alt. I know it's easy pickings. He's the #1 offensive lineman in this draft class, but this is one of those don't overthink it moments. 6'9". What the fuck? Like 6'9", 321 pounds, and he ran a 5.04. Like, it's just not normal for people to be this big and to move that quickly. You know how the stigma is like, oh, the fat offensive lineman can't run. These guys are faster or just as fast as, like, wide receivers. I know it's a bit of a stretch, but still. 6'9", a former tight end, now an offensive tackle. Look at the relative athletic score. If you don't know what this means, don't worry about it too much. It just compares offensive line or just NFL draft prospects in general, their measurements from previous drafts. And it's a little bit confusing, but I'll put it down in the most simplest terms. Green equals good. There's a lot of green on screen right now. I don't see a way Joe Alt gets past the Tennessee Titans at pick #7. They are looking to improve their offensive line. If we see a run of wide receivers go before Tennessee, I am confident they are going to go with Joe Alt at #7. My second loser is hamstrings. You might notice a trend here. There really are no losers from the offensive line class this year. They're all awesome. But unfortunately, we did see the injury bug come to plague a couple of guys during the Combine. Nate Wiggins, the cornerback from Clemson. And then today, we saw Olu Fashanu. He's 6'6", 312 pounds. He left the Combine early due to a right thigh injury. That was a bummer. Didn't get to see him in full force. Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle we talked about earlier out of Georgia, he tweaked his hamstring after running his first 40-yard dash, so didn't get to see more of him. But all in all, what we did see from Fashanu, I'm seeing a lot of green. I mean, again, show me the money. It's this NFL draft class at offensive line. Now, hopefully we're going to see more from Fashanu very soon. Penn State's Pro Day is March 15th, so we're talking less than 2 weeks away. Hopefully that right thigh is healed by then, and everyone can get all the measurements they are drooling over. Although, we're talking offensive line, I don't know how much you really learn from watching them run around in their underwear. I mean, when have you ever asked your left tackle to run 40 yards uninterrupted? So 40-yard dashes are cool and all, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's the best indicator for evaluating the fatties up front. Now, for me, I don't see a world where Olu Fashanu gets past the Raiders at 13. And I think he's going to go much earlier than that. But truly, the Raiders at 13, if he were to somehow fall to them, if we get a bong picture released the day of the draft, even the Raiders are going to go, he's way too good to pass on. This is his absolute backstop, his floor when it comes to the draft. Third and final winner. I'm going to go with Wyoming's Frank Crum. I know this might have not have been the household name you were expecting, and there are a lot of great offensive linemen. But can we talk about Frank Crum for a moment? If you want to look for green on an RAS, this is it right here. And if that's not good enough for you, he belongs in the Hall of Fame of the Minnesota High School Hockey Flow Tournament. Look at this guy. That's a player that you want your quarterback to see in front of because he's not letting anyone steal their lunch money. He came in at a whopping 6'8", 313 pounds, and he ran below 5 seconds in his 40-yard dash. What lab were these offensive linemen made in this year? One after another. They're bigger, and they're faster, and they're stronger. Frank Crum was not someone I had on my radar coming into the NFL Combine, but after the Combine he put up, he may have moved himself from being a day 3 draft pick to maybe even day 2, the end of round 3. Definitely a name to keep an eye on for sure. Now let's huddle up here. Just a moment of honesty. Did you watch the NFL Combine? I do feel like the NFL does have a tiny issue on their hands where if coaches aren't even starting to come to the Combine anymore and the marquee players aren't throwing at the Combine and whatnot, what incentive is there for your average fan to watch it if the team's head coach isn't even going to go to watch it? So let me know, did you watch the NFL Combine? Yes or no in the comment section. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope everyone has a wonderful remaining Sunday, and we're going to make sure we see you all later because you're subscribed to the channel.